Yo, Hal, is that the shine of your bald forehead or is it the light? I can't
It's
tell.
not the shine of my bald forehead, you
See, bald foreheads are a form of art,
deserving of a
okay?
haircut male.
All right.
Adrian,
All right,
go, go,
guys,
go,
what's
go.
going on? We're back. Week 11 of our. Well, does last week's episode count with the chess? Because
No, it doesn't matter, dude.
week
Week
10,
10, shut
okay,
the
week 10 of podcast. We took a bit of a break last week because our brains were mumbled, so we had no idea what we were gonna do. But we have a plan.
You more
Hey,
like.
okay. It's been a tough month.
And I was like, Adrian, give me an idea. I don't know. After
They had
5
no
days.
idea, so their only idea was, let's bring Hal back.
Yeah, no, literally,
Again.
I was like, yo, I think the best way to solve our issue is to bring this guy again. Yeah.
Yeah. You were like, you know who talks a lot? Hal. Let's bring him
It was
here.
just a way to get me to do less work. But hey, we're here already. Okay.
Yes.
So today's topic is quite difficult, to be honest, because it's art and what it really is and its purpose and what are the implications of art in our life and in society. So to start off,
Hal, why your hairline slanted,
I
bro?
was. That's the
The
art
art
of
of
haircut.
I couldn't roast it. Why do you have to roast me on the podcast, bro? I was like,
Yeah, let's do art,
yeah.
and then your hairline roasted.
Is that
No,
art?
I
though?
mean, like Tupac.
All right, come on.
Tupac, white
Before we
version.
get flagged.
Okay, okay. Go,
All right.
go
So,
ahead, go ahead. Continue, Adrian.
Well, we should really consider what we're talking about when we say art. So a common definition that a lot of people use when we bring up art is it's something that is created with imagination and skill and is usually beautiful. And that's just the generalized definition of art. But again, like art is kind of subjective because it's something that we think individually and we have different perspectives on it. Sure, it's made with imagination and sometimes skill and mostly talent. But if we think about it, is it always beautiful?
The point of art is that it's subjective, right? It's just like any human emotion. It's not really exact. You can't really. I don't think there's a way you can quantify it. It's sort of like a gray
Yeah.
area, where it could be considered to be art by some people, but some people not. And so it's something not really that, I guess, defined. So maybe it could be a way that someone expresses, their emotions, their thoughts, something people create. It's something beyond language, because I can still enjoy songs that even though we don't understand the language of the songs, like Japanese songs or Scatman or what is it, the
Scatman,
Crazy
yeah.
Frog, some good songs, but
I don't.
not necessarily.
So you're saying that there are forms of go ahead.
Oh, fine. All right. Well, when I think of art, I always think of art is so disputed, so you have to have like a really broad definition, which high-key doesn't make any sense. But generally, I think when we all think of art or when we say something is art, it's always a reflection of something or evokes some sort of emotion within us, And I think
True.
that's why art is so subjective, because we can't really compare. Let's say let's say we're talking about movies and I like Shawshank Redemption and you like the SpongeBob movie, but somehow SpongeBob movie evokes more emotion to you and it's more sentimental for you. That's gonna be a better movie than Shawshank Redemption. I think it goes down to the fact, like, when we think of art, it's very much about emotions instead of something
Yeah, True.
very objective. So when we treat something with, let's say, it's like if I rate my best friends, it's not gonna be. There's no possibility of saying like, oh, this friend is objectively a better best friend. This is why. They,
Wait.
I mean, it could, I guess,
Oh,
but
yeah.
the majority of the time, I guess, when it comes to art, we rate things based on our emotions, and that's why.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not trying to lose my future job.
Wait,
Bro,
wait. Actually,
so.
that sparked upon
It's fine.
something.
It's fine. Adrian, you.
When you guys were talking about rating things, you know how we have art critics out there, and so if the whole basis of art being relative or subjective, then what are these art critics really doing? Are they critiquing in their own standards, in their own perspectives? So isn't that basically like not really worth it then, if you think about it? If a piece of art is being critiqued.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it's basically just sharing your opinion on a piece of art, right? Um, whether or not the intended purpose was encountered or found by you is another thing, but you're just sharing your experience when viewing or experiencing such art. So just like how if a critic was saying, oh, I don't like this movie because this, then it's like, it's more of like a discussion type thing. So yeah, maybe you as a person, you don't agree with the critic. You have a different opinion. You're like, this movie's super good, whatever. But it's just the another point of why,
I see. Yeah.
or another point of the importance of art. Because it allows us to sort of diversify our opinions, so people can think different things. It's almost like I'm sharing a piece of art with you, and I'm like, hey, this is super good. You can go listen to it. But if you don't like it, then that's a different thing altogether, right? If the opinions are different, that's a different thing altogether. It's wonderful that we can have differing opinions coming from the same object or same.
No, it is quite interesting how we can have a lot of connections through different societies. Because, like, I mean, like we said before, art doesn't necessarily have a linguistic limit. It could be expressed and it could be understood from people, but different races, different religion, different gender, and it's quite interesting how, like, you can have that link. If you go online, you can always find like a community with who like that specific area of art, and they're always not all the time same type of people. They're different. It's unique, and so, like, it's not always going to be the same thing with something that is restricted with language. Like, well, I don't know if this is a good example, but like books, for instance. If there's English books, you would only have people who are able to speak English. But if you're having like a piece of music, you would have people all over the world who would not only have to necessarily understand it, but still just like the vibe. And I think in that way, it's kind of good, no?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to, let's say, critiquing as a whole, there's definitely biases and everything, and it takes different types of skill. Well, different types of arts market towards the different types of emotions or different types of skill sets that I can't think of the word particularly. But generally, you could say that, to me, all art has this substance of poetry. Some of the best movies have that substance of, or that so-called vibe, right? It's just that feeling, that emotion, and you're just like, it's so fluid and everything. And I think all art has that thing that we can't really describe. It's just innate. It's just, you ask most people, oh, why do you like that song or why do you like that play? They won't be like, oh, I love this part And what that part, they won't go into a
Mm.
deep analysis. What most people will say is, I just like it, I feel it, you know.
Right.
I think
Uh,
what you're talking about is just generally like, the relationship between humanity and aesthetics.
yeah,
Like
I think,
because I've explored this with Caleb before, so like aesthetic has some sort of intrinsic value to us as humans for some reason. And I think something very interesting that I came across, not necessarily that music or art is something that is, required or necessary, but maybe it's a byproduct of our evolution or progression. Because humans are, biologically programmed with hormones or electrical signals, basically responses to any sort of stimuli that help us to survive. And basically, it's possible that some of these properties, some of these response to stimuli coincide with art, and it basically causes us to feel, feel good when we view or
when it comes to that, I think you can strip a lot of the beauty of art. I think there's a problem when we try to intellectualize things too much. I think art is much better off without being intellectualized. It's more some things are just better left unexplained, you know. I think that's a pursuit that humans will only find that the more they try to explain things, the more they'll question their
Mm.
existence more and more and more and more, you know. And they'll try to go to more. I think when it comes to art, it's not something that the more you try to explain things, it degrades its value. I think. I think there's some parts where you can explain and it enhances, but there's many parts when you explain it can, like, to me, if I think of music as just some biological and evolutionary response that was developed due to evolution, it's interesting. But I guess for me and my biases specifically, I think that music is not only just music, but art as a whole is meant to create this sense of awe.
Mm.
And the more you explain it, the less you get rid of awe. And if we explain art and poetry as this thing that evokes that sense of awe, that sense of wonder, then the more we explain it, the more we make art cease to be art.
I think I
You know what I mean?
understand
I
what you're
think that's very
saying.
like,
but I mean, like, I kind of understand what Hal is saying, but like, at the same time, I feel like what I'm talking about doesn't go into, like, there is a certain point where, yeah, if you understand it, it loses its wonder because some of its wonder comes from the mystery and how amazing it is, but then I don't think the length to which I'm exploring it necessarily subtracts from that experience enough. You know what I'm saying? Because I
yeah, I
still,
guess.
even though I think about these things, I still find like, that music is wonderful, that it's, like even the Windows 9, like even the Windows XP screen, like, for some reason that's art as well, that evokes some sort of nostalgia or memory within our
Yeah,
our heads. And we still don't know why, and that's
I
an
guess this
amazing
kind of
thing.
links in well with last week's
yeah, I guess.
topic. We could have discussed art actually. It was a pretty good idea. But certainly I think art is a method of, well, not necessarily a method, but a way we can store our feelings or emotions. I mean, like I said, we discussed this in our podcast last week, but it's kind of one of the ways we can store one of our memories that we hold dearest to us, and it can be expressed through art and use it as a medium, usually through music, movies, photos. I don't know, pictures. I mean, pictures or photos are saying, but I mean like paintings or something like that. That's
Okay,
better than
okay,
nothing.
fine. Well, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out in post. Okay, Adrian, you're saying something before my stupid computer
Yeah,
rudely
I was gonna
interrupted.
talk about the history of art, or in its essence, when art was really like introduced. And interestingly, it came along with modern human behavior when the Homo sapiens migrated from Africa to Europe, 45,000 before present. And so that's pretty interesting. It's been with us throughout our modern human behavior, basically since we were able to think and develop our systems and evolve. We've always had art. Maybe it's the form of like, maybe it's something that we need to, in order to, well, progress in life or in development. Because like if you look at things, I'm not sure when the earliest recorded art stuff is, but like even cavemen have like
Yeah,
like,
that's what
all this,
that's what I was gonna
the
say. Like
drawings and
they
sculptures.
have like all of this stuff have existed for a long time, evidenced by primitive instruments or primitive drawings. Like, yeah, and I heard somewhere that it's like making sounds or some kind of music in early, back in the early days, they were like banging their drums and stuff. It sort of helped to keep the group's morale up and provided other sort of like mental benefits. So I think I heard this once from like some survival tips or something. Like it's a good tactic to use when a group is like stranded on an island. You can like make some music or hype yourself up to like so your morale is high. Or perhaps music or art, everything just could be like their way of um, like their way of passing down their culture or just passing down their stories, information. Is generally a positive experience, which is why there are still a lot of creators and enjoyers today.
Like, in my opinion, I think that's because it's been there since the beginning. Because I think humans definitely have an urge to tell a story. We've always
Yeah.
been people who like stories. We've always been people who, I don't know, we've been a communicating species. We're the species that is best in communication when it comes to socializing. So I think art is definitely used as a tool to sort of unite people much more than it has been a tool to disunite
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, so it's like a method of communication. I see, I
Yeah.
see. Yeah, pretty good. Yeah.
Method of communication. No,
Adrian,
it was making
what do
me
you?
think. Like maybe art could be one of the ways we could communicate with things that are beyond our reach. Like I know I'm going out of a little bit out of reach here, but like think about this. Like if there are beings like aliens, obviously we've sent a few songs into space as a transmission and stuff, as a way of saying that we exist. And we've sent I mean, I'm pretty sure you guys are aware of this. We've sent like a few songs out there. Uh,
Yeah, that's the
yeah,
golden
and
record,
and I mean, maybe
right?
that's just
Yeah.
a way of hope, because like you know what I said, like that art doesn't have a linguistic limit. It's not limited by our ability to speak languages or any other form of communication. So potentially, if we as humans can understand this form and we can use this form to communicate, what's to say that other beings can't? And so potentially, one of the key things that could help us with developing and advancing our systems and our technologies, or reaching out to other civilizations, could be through art.
Yeah, it could be like also something like, extending past somebody's lifetime. So your work is like transcends
Yeah,
generations, because even though maybe your language has faded or something, like back in the day, the language of the cavemans are like not understood anymore, but their drawings, like we still see their history, their culture, their drawings, the things that they left
yeah,
behind.
yeah, certainly. And that's one of
Yeah.
the ways that, I mean, that's one of the few ways we actually know history, and that's how we have a recollection of things that have happened in past, because we have these memoirs or these small little things that have been left for us to find. And it's not always limited in languages, because sometimes we have these populations that don't even speak that language anymore, and the only way we find our way through them is through analyzing and just looking through what they had to say for themselves through their expressions, either in music, in instruments, in drawings, or these paintings that are out there, or sculptures, or statues, or they're like architecture. Architecture is such a huge part in art. It's such a huge element because like just by looking at the architectures of like if you go to Japan, for instance, Kev, you know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about Japan. The architecture stuff they have there is phenomenal. It goes back to how many centuries. It's beautiful out there, and it has something to say for itself. And like I was talking about this with you, Kev, in one of our podcasts a long time ago. I was talking about those pillars and those mountains. Remember that? And those kind of stuff was made with something in mind. Obviously, we don't know now, but they made it because they thought of something as a way of representing something. It could have been like a religious cult or something, but we don't know. And the fact that it's beautiful, it's out there, and maybe it's trying to communicate something to us, and it's just a form of expression, a form of maybe intelligence, teaching us something that we.
Yeah. And in my opinion, I think this is especially when it comes to Shakespeare's theater and Shakespeare's plays. You're a theater student, so you might know something about it. But it's what they do with Shakespeare, especially in England, is that they don't change the dialogue, but they will change the time setting and make it more modern, which I think
it is interesting because
not the delivery. It's literally everything is the same except the lighting and the whole dialogue and the plot is the same. The names are the same. They even keep it in the same language.
Yeah, no. So the delivery is different, no?
Well,
like the way they.
What do you mean by?
Like just the way they present the art, because it's basically the same thing as the presentation, delivery, kind of.
And one of the reasons they do that is one, the person directing those plays are usually ones that are trying to do something different, because like especially with Shakespeare's plays, it's pretty old and it's usually obviously repetitive because everyone knows about it. Everyone does the same play again and again. And one of the things that these directors usually attempt to achieve is something special to them. So their interpretation of what they first felt when they read the play, or like what they envisioned when what they saw. You know how like when we read books, when we listen to music, we have our own visions, right? We see things. Now, yes, these usually people when they relate to art, they usually relate to something that they're experiencing in that moment, like if they're suffering loss, or if they're like happy or something, if there's some event that has happened, usually overtakes their emotional side, and usually they relate what they're reading or what they're listening to automatically to that. And if I'm anxious about my exam results in a few days and I'm watching this movie, and I'll be like, okay, I can relate to this because, well, I'm also anxious like this character, and I'd have special imaginations. If I'm reading a book, I'd have these own visions of myself. And what these directors try to do is put their own versions out there, because to them it's just a way of expressing their form of their art, what they see from Shakespeare's plays. So having a, let's say Romeo and Juliet in like Italy or something, between gang wars, you can have Romeo in one gang, Juliet in the other gang. They're doing that just not to modernize it, but in order to like create a relatable way. I know how we said it has no linguistic barrier. Doing something that a specific social class, or not social class, but like a group of people or a group of community would understand, would make that the intentions of potentially the person who made it, well, Shakespeare, maybe he was just trying to explain how love is beautiful. Maybe he was trying to explain that, but the people in Italy wouldn't necessarily understand it if they just read his normal play. But through this director who came in and staged this play with like gang wars and that kind of stuff, they were able to understand that a bit more because they're related, they can relate themselves to it. You know what I mean? So it's also important.
Is this a JoJo reference?
I've never watched JoJo, so I don't know. But Yeah, I mean that's why we have like people who make these different renditions or like different versions of music. uh Different movies are remade all the time. How many Spider-Man movies have we had? Why do we do it? Because we want to have a different twist to it, different element, something that makes it new. And that's one of the reasons why like you can't hate all the Spider-Man movies, because well, some are good, some are bad, but that's up to you, right?
Well, I don't like the original ones,
Well,
maybe.
okay. Well, I absolutely love the original ones. Aside, I grew up with those. I have a personal link with them.
No, because I like, the Eddie Brock. I mean, the new Venom, right? That's
Yeah,
much
yeah,
better
true,
than
true,
the
true. That
Spider-Man
is true. That
3.
is true. And, I mean, that's what I mean. And the reason I like those Spider-Man movies was because I grew up with them. Those were one of the first few English films I ever watched. And so that's why it has a special link to me. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah, so the
exactly. So the
experience is
experience that you
different
get
between us.
with upon first impression of that art would probably be the most dominant effect or the most important emotion that you had that you will carry on forever with that specific art. If you know what I'm saying.
But I mean, it goes back to expression, right? Words are just shallow. Well, not necessarily in the sense that words can mean many things, but like a picture, like they say, a picture can mean 1,000 words, blah blah blah. It basically, like how you can easily express emotion through
Yeah.
art, right? If you create a horror film, you express, you express fear. If you create, some like city pop song, maybe you express like nostalgia or something. So art is able to represent the things that can't just be represented by mere words. So maybe the feeling of the emotion itself. And I think that's why it's also, I think that's why it's very important, because it allows us another facet into storytelling. It's not just, you know our words from person to person, but it's like goes towards a deeper level of our subconscious, our feelings, our thoughts, things like that.
And I think that's where we get
How you got anything
this
to say?
imagine. You know how like initially when I said what do we mean by art, I said that a lot of people think it's if we get art through our talents or skills and imagination. um, where does imagination come from, right? But like because we have that, we're able to create these different things, these new things that other people wouldn't have thought of, and some people choose to represent that through art as a way of expressing. Like actually, you know what? Like imagine if we could just like for a day instead of speaking, we use some form of art to communicate with each other, like just through like movie references or like a song lyrics. How do you think that would be? That would be pretty interesting actually, because don't you think we'd avoid less uh, misunderstandings between each other if we were to communicate through pure emotion instead of words?
I think there'd be a lot more misunderstanding if it was through pure emotion.
Yeah,
I
because the
think.
the problem is like interpretation, right? It's great
Yeah.
that you can interpret many things from one thing, right? And that's just the property of emotions and things that aren't exact. For example, the universe. You can't just describe it with one thing. You can't really describe the wonder of the universe with the word universe. But essentially, language is just an association tool. So I can understand what you're saying because I know what those words mean. And that essentially is, better in terms of like understanding exactly, but at the same time, it doesn't allow us the full depth of meaning that something has, if
Yeah,
you know what I'm
that's a
talking
good
about.
point, and I think that's why we have languages.
Yeah,
Yes.
because
Totally
art
agree.
art is very interpretive. Like, have you guys like seen that like meme concert, where the guy just literally, sits down at the piano and does nothing for like 4 minutes,
No, I
33
haven't seen that.
seconds? So I think the thing is called like it's literally called, the piece is literally called 4 minutes and 33 seconds, and it's just basically the guy doing nothing for 4 minutes 33 seconds. I mean, the intention of the artist is like, the art is what sounds the audiences are making, like someone's coughing like or someone's
Yes, I mean,
ringtone just suddenly comes up, like. But then again, if you were someone who bought ticket to the concert, like, would you feel scammed that there wasn't any music? So again, it's very interpretive, right? Or even like the modern art, people are the white canvas, or just the ones with random shapes and random blobs of paint, like, to us, we could say like, oh my god, we can do
Yeah.
that any day, right? We'll be so rich. But like, in the end, uh, it sold for millions, so you could argue that there's value in that. So, you know
Well, yeah, I don't think anyone can ever say there's no value in anything, because you put value to something. Value exists because you think it's worth having. I mean, of course, we get stuff like things that are fiscally valued and monetary value. That's because, well, that's how the world works. But there are some things that we can't describe, like intrinsic value. How something has a specific value only we'd understand, right? Because we have a specific link to that, a specific emotion or memory that is only for us. And no matter how hard you try to explain it to someone else, they're never going to understand that because they never experienced it. Only you did. And I think that is what art basically is, right? Like, no matter how many times you try to explain, like, for instance, let me say this, like, if I have a movie that I absolutely love and I want to show it to you two guys, you probably might not even enjoy the first
Killer Bean.
Yeah, I remember when I have never heard of Killer Bean before. Like, in school, we were in school, we had what was it, a free period, I think, and Kevin came up to me and he was like, "Dude, have you seen Killer Bean?" I was like, "What the heck is Killer Bean?" And he's like, "This movie, dude." At first, I thought he was just joking because it was this like B-Tech animated made by this some Asian guy. I was like, "Are you joking? Are you serious? This movie?" And then I watched it and I could tell why he liked it. Like, while I thought he was joking most of the time about how this movie was so good. It's funny as hell,
funny,
and
dude.
I absolutely loved it. But of course, I'm never gonna understand how important or how interesting this discovery was for him, because I wasn't placed in that exact scenario. Do you think this is an interesting question? Because I know we're all different people, right? But if we were exposed to a piece of work, like a piece of art, given the same circumstances, same surroundings, same situation, everything the same, we were given the same food that day, same bed, whatever it is, do you think that your reactions would be the exact same to a piece, given that all the other variables were the exact same?
I think no, because then I don't think our bodies operate deterministically in the form that you push the right buttons for every guy and the same person will come out. I don't think that happens. That's never happened, maybe because we haven't put the same variables out. But at the same time, I think that our mind is not it doesn't seem deterministic. And I don't know if that's just my observation. I don't know if that's the truth. I think it's just my observation. It just doesn't seem deterministic.
Like, logically, if you had the exact same person, the exact same time at the exact same place, logically it would have the exact same response, right? But then again, even if the variables, the situation were the same, we're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
the same people. We have our own processes of thinking, we've experienced many different things, and our experiences, our
That
backgrounds is what leads to perhaps those different experiences, in light of our sense of ourselves, our individuality is what leads credence to our experience of
Yeah,
something,
that would have been my exact answer. Because I think, like, obviously, it's not just one moment that will decide what we think or what we will react to, how we will react to. There are countless number of hours and things that are processes that are going on that will contribute to or build up to something like a reaction. And I think that's what's important, because there's no way we could potentially replicate different people to give off the same reaction or expression, because that's what makes us human, and that's what makes art valuable. If art was easily if art was like something that everybody can have the same understanding with, then what is the point of having it? Isn't it just some other mediocre thing that everyone can have, everyone can relate to? I think the idea of art is that it's ambiguous, it's subjective, and that's why it's important, because it makes us different from every other person and not the exact same. If you know what I mean, not the exact. It what makes us us. You know, what makes you you. And I think now more than ever, we need stuff like this to remind us who we are and what we need or what we strive for, because people are losing sense of connection to themselves, or they don't know who they are. Art can help you express or understand.
Well, I think because because nothing is necessarily exact, and because we, to an extent, we don't understand ourselves nor other people, and so through creating art and sharing art, we share things that are in our subconscious that we might not necessarily understand, but it allows us that medium, you know. And also, like, it also goes back to one of the thoughts I've had, like, people are special, but we're also not special, in the sense that we're all humans, but at the same time, nobody ever in any in any configuration of this universe has experienced exactly the same experiences that you have. And so essentially you're something unique, you know. And so you should live life your way, because no one else will ever be able to live it that way. But at the same time, the 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 reason why I say you're not special is because you shouldn't get ahead of yourself and be like, oh, I'm the king, you know, whatever. You know, other people are also important, but you know, you are your own person. You know, you gotta live life your own way and experience things,
Yeah.
you know, the way you want to. And
Yeah, certainly. And I think we should have a bit more exposure to art. I think a lot of cultures are being, obviously, a lot of cultures are revolved around art. Like one of the main things they do is making art. For instance, like the Indonesian culture is heavily based on, like, we have a lot of batik making stuff. A lot of stuff that we do is, oh, well, not, I guess I can't say we because I'm not Indonesian, but a lot of stuff that the people of this country do is quite artistic. They make these. I think you know what I mean, right? Like, I can't think of an example at the top of my head right now that I mentioned it, but most of the cultures around Asia and probably around the world have like their own kind of art thing, you know, something that's specific to them, endemic to them, which I think is quite important, because it just makes it able for you to differentiate between each culture and why it's important. And
but I get a question for Hal. Hal, do you think that
Yeah.
KFC is art?
No. What?
I mean,
What kind
it's
of-
food, no? It's good, no?
I had KFC for
I
dinner
don't know.
tonight.
Yeah.
And
But then you start. But then,
Huh?
like I said, if you say KFC is art, you start making the definition so broad that everything becomes art. It's like, oh,
Maybe everything is art.
yeah, but it's like, oh, what's cold? And then you say,
Huh?
oh, cold is every single temperature. Something becomes so broad it loses
yeah,
meaning.
yeah.
I maybe.
So if something like art becomes so broad, it ceases to be art because it has no meaning.
It
It's
becomes
just a thing.
nothing.
Right. It's just an association, an understanding, a contract between each other.
Yes, as you so eloquently say it.
Yo, Hal, is that the shine of your bald forehead, or is it the light? I can't tell.
It's not the shine of my bald forehead, you
See, bald foreheads are a form of art,
deserving of a
okay?
haircut, male.
And
It's
and-
a form of
and
art.
barbers,
Look at this.
they work within that industry of art. Have you seen those memes with those people with like pineapple hairs, and then there's like this guy who has like a rat? That's almost hilarious, man.
I don't know. I think that starts to become way too abstract to be called art, bro.
Yeah, well,
I think as soon as we like say a rat of hair on a human's head is art.
you know, actually,
But I mean, like,
I'm done.
you know, there are those weird modern art things where they're like, I think once there was an exhibit of like a messy room or something, and then that was the artist's work, and there was a reason behind that, but you know, they're presenting it as art to express something. So would you consider something like that as art or not? Like there was an exhibit of like a messy room. Like they put certain things in certain arrangement to make it look messy, blah blah blah. What do you think about that?
I think that's just. I'm like, if I go to a museum and I see that, I'm a.
maybe
for
maybe you should
refund
stop
and-
before you get cancelled. Okay,
Yeah.
you're gonna.
Yeah, see that's no, but
the
that's
thing is,
a
like, why I paid you money. I can have my own messy room
Yeah.
at my house.
So I mean, this is quite interesting because
And I guess
mean,
it's
I'm
like-
pretty sure you guys have seen these videos online where this guy's like in an art exhibit, and then suddenly he takes off his glasses and puts it in the middle, and then suddenly there's a group of people looking at the glasses, and they're like,
oh yeah.
and
Oh yeah, I saw this.
I-
Funny meme.
I found it funny
And they're like,
because
"What?"
like some people were like, I remember this. This was in the ancient Greek. The glasses represent a sign. I was like, what the hell is he on about? How did he get to Greek from?
Of
And
intelligence.
it was pretty interesting.
No, yeah, but it's the same thing what I was talking about, right? Art is a gray area necessarily because you know, something like that, you would treat it
Yeah.
as a scam, obviously, right? Or the music concert I was talking about, Hal would definitely treat that as a scam. He's like, oh, I'm already going to listen to classical music, which is kind of and then he goes there, but then it's not even anything, it's just silence, and he's like, damn, bro, I want a refund. So
That is most clearly a scam. You
Yeah.
market something. It's what is a scam? If you market something and you don't get the thing that the guy was actually marketing. You market a music piece, and then some guy is like for 4 minutes 33 seconds. It's like
yeah, and
That's not-
that's why as you know, I understand what you're saying. Like this is a viewpoint that many people have, and it's a very sound and you know makes sense viewpoint. But at the same time, it's very interpretive. You know, like as much as there are people out there who you know who don't agree with this sort of thing, there are people who genuinely find meaning in this kind of thing. So you know, it's just that
Yeah.
at some point when we get closer and closer to the boundary, the opinions become very polarizing, if you know
Yeah,
what I'm
certainly.
saying.
And I think like when usually these things are marketed, they're probably marketed to like a specific niche anyway. So maybe targeted to those people who are expecting this kind of stuff. And I mean, like going back to like what we think about like
That's
these kind
kinda
of
true.
things. Initially speaking, when I see these like Jackson Pollock paintings, I was like, "Hey, I can do that too. I can grab a spoon and just smack it onto a canvas, and I got art." I was like, for me, and I'm just like, you know, that how is that? I don't understand how this is art to people because like anybody can do that, right? I can just puke onto that canvas and it'd be like it would be art. I can sell that for $3 billion. People would buy it, but like.
No, dude, you can literally call You can literally call the thing puke on canvas and
Yeah,
puke on it.
and it'll be like, oh yes, I remember this man is an intelligent one. Yes, he created this just by puking in it. But I mean, like seriously though, I mean these kind of things are quite interesting because initially for me, when I was less mature than I am now, it's not saying I am mature, and I'm just saying before I used to think of these things quite hilariously. I was like, this is kind of funny stuff, this right here. But like, coming to think of it, looking at different perspectives, I mean, I can see why people are like, are looking at this and they're like, oh, this is an interesting piece of art, because like, while we are just throwing some random paint into a canvas, the person who looks at it doesn't necessarily know that. They could be like, they're trying to search for a meaning in something that clearly didn't have any dedicated meaning, if you know what I mean. Something that isn't defined, you try to find a definition.
Well, I mean, it could be that the artist who created it has.
Yeah, definitely.
Meaning,
but I mean, like, let's be honest. Let's be
you
honest.
can't
Here.
discount
If I was
that,
to throw a bunch of colors on a canvas and I was feeling, I don't know, happy. Could you tell that I was being happy by looking at a bunch of red, blue, and yellow on a canvas? Probably not. But
well, I mean, maybe we couldn't, but like, if Picasso, like, if his last painting was before death, he was like, doing that, would you question it? I don't think so. It's Picasso.
Yeah. And I think this is why art is an interesting topic, right? Because you can never get right or wrong answers. And that's one of the reasons why it's important, because like nowadays especially we get people who are so focused on what they want to believe, but like truth be told, there isn't always just one answer, right? In some other things surely there is one definitive answer, but people need to learn and understand.
Hey, shout out to Bob Ross, yo, the joy of painting.
But like, I mean, like people like Bob Ross though, like even if he's just painting something, we're having that journey with him, right? So that's what matters. It's not necessarily the painting, the end result. It's the journey that we make, and I think as people who like, those people who like love and appreciate arts, those people who like spend millions of dollars, they don't necessarily appreciate the what is there. They probably love what the amount of hard work or the amount of patience and skill it took to get there, and they appreciate that, and maybe they just want to reward that.
I want to talk about Bob. I want to talk about
All right,
Bob
go
Ross
ahead,
and we
Bob
can
Ross.
But even though he's gone now, people still watch his stuff. Even I still watch his stuff. Like, he just paints the landscapes, and I always love landscape paintings. But it's more of like, him sharing the joy of painting, not just art itself, but him sharing the process, sharing his feelings of it with other people.
That's why
go.
sometimes like you can't, and that's what I meant by like Jackson Pollock paintings. I cannot say that is trash, because to me it's just a random guy throwing painting, but to another person it's that journey. It's what that person was thinking.
Well, I mean, you can say it's trash. But
Well, I mean, you can say it's trash, but it's not
exactly.
objectively trash,
To me, it's trash.
And that's
but to
the
other
purpose of
people,
art.
that's like, wow, that's beautiful. How did you get that color to shape
One
ratio?
man's trash is another man's
Exactly.
treasure.
That's-
If I drew that, like I would have thrown it away.
Dude, imagine that, and then some like art scout comes in like looking through the dumpsters, and he's like, "Oh my god, this is so
and then he sells that.
revolutionary."
He sells that for $50 billion.
They wrote Jackson Pollock.
Yeah.
There's actually a movie
True.
like that. Did you know? This guy makes this painting, and then he thought it's trash, so I think he donates it somewhere. And then this guy comes and finds it. He's like, "Oh my god, this is beautiful," and then puts it on auction for like $50 billion or something like that. And so this guy goes back and tries to claim it. He's like, "No, I made that painting." It's a good movie. I'm not sure what it's called, but
Okay, well, I think that's it for today.
yes, people.
You know.
Hal has a curfew.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you did like listening, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. If you're on YouTube, maybe comment your own thoughts about these modernist paintings or pieces of art.
What if
You know,
what
you
if
can
there's
like,
like a comment? What if there's like a
huh?
comment of being what if there's a comment of being like, yo, you gotta let Hal
It'd
go?
probably be you in a different account.
That's gonna be you. That's gonna be you, or your mother.
That's me already right now, dog.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but if you're on Spotify, make sure to check out our YouTube and vice versa. Yeah, I guess that's it for today. Thank you to Hal
Thank you
for
very
coming
much.
on today
Once
and
again, I'll
talking
see
to
you
us.
guys in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we'll see
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for watching.